Hey, how's it going? It's Grant
And Shelby.
with the Garden of Eater, and today we are going to be talking about baby survival rate, how to get your highest chances, the most babies surviving off of each clutch of babies. We will be talking about all types of shrimp tonight, freshwater at least, and even some brackish shrimp as well. But the main focus is going to be baby survival rate. So, right off the rip, it all depends on the type of tank setup that you have and what the parameters are going to be. For Neocaridina, they prefer a nice inert environment with neutral pH, enough water hardness for them to molt. And besides that, you need some type of filtration, water, of course. And yes, there is ways to get around the whole filtration thing and water changes and whatnot, but adding filters, adding water changes to your schedule is, of course, going to increase the amount of baby survival rate you get. So, everything tonight will be geared towards the highest possible chance of getting the most babies. So, filtration, you want a lid on there if possible. If not a lid, do an auto top off system. I'll get more into that, but you really got to have your parameters on check for the shrimp to be able to molt. Other than that, I don't worry about anything too much with the Neocaridina. With Caridina, everything's pretty much the same except for the substrate. Of course, you need to use aqua soil, and then the water parameters. You need enough water hardness in the water, but you also need zero carbonate hardness. So 0 kH, that way the pH can buffer to a low enough acidity that the shrimp can molt and thrive and give you the most babies, right? For Sulawesi, it's basically the complete opposite. You use the crushed coral instead of aqua soil, and then you're using a water hardness of 200 or higher with KH in the water to get a higher pH, as well as the buffering powder buffering powder buffer that they add into the minerals to kind of help raise the pH a little bit as well. We use the 8.5 Sulawesi mix, but it is also the only tank that we add in a heater. Everything else, I highly recommend not using a heater in your aquariums. The warmer water in a Neocaridina setup might give you more babies, but it isn't necessarily going to increase your baby survival rate. And then on top of that, you also have the Opaula shrimp. Now, these are pretty much the same setup as a Sulawesi shrimp. You don't need the heater, and instead of the hard soft water, this is a brackish water where we do mix the water to 1.007 water hardness or salinity. And that is where the Opaula thrive and do their best at. But pretty much all the shrimp setups are basically the same substrate, some types of structure, maybe a little plant in the middle, and then the suction cup sponge filter that you see there behind me. But all of them are perfectly set up for breeding shrimp, and they do pretty well. And the reason why I feel like I can talk about the substrate the subject is because we pretty much make our whole living here off of just breeding shrimp. I'm 100%. That's all I do for a living. Shelby does have another job, but it isn't a full-time job. We were looking at her stepping away. More insurance prices and everything like that. All the bills on average from this time last year have gone up probably $700, and that's just for utilities. I'm not talking food or anything else for us. So she is sticking out and hanging out at West Marine for a little bit longer. But besides that, we are able to just breed shrimp. We do sell moss and some shrimp products and stuff like that also. But my main source of income is breeding these shrimp. We don't import. We don't buy and resell. There is a couple of shrimp breeders here in Florida that we do get shrimp off of occasionally, but it's all from our own stock. They're all still homebred, and nothing is imported. So the actual water parameters and setup and everything like that for all the shrimp is something that we think we've kind of dialed in for the maximum baby survival rate. A lot of our tanks are just jam-packed, swamped with babies, and then we're able to sell out of those regularly. We have a lot of varieties of shrimp, over 140. We have 400 plus aquariums in the house. Probably 300 of them are just dedicated for breeding dwarf freshwater shrimp. So it's something I probably could say I'm an expert at, since I've spent the probably 10,000 hours now doing just that. So that is how I recommend you set up your tanks, dial in your parameters. For us, the parameters is really something that we've kind of sacrificed in some places, like some of the shrimp, for instance, the super crystal reds and the red calcios, they might do a little bit better at 220 total dissolved solids. However, for us in the entire house, overall, it's easier to set everything to 150 TDS. This is all the Caridina shrimp anyways. And that way we're able to do water changes consistently. We're able to stay on a routine. And for us, that is what works best to have the best baby survival rate overall throughout the entire house. Now, of course, if we had clones of ourselves or had more hours in the day, more time, then yes, I could dial in certain tanks to higher TDS, certain tanks to lower TDS, and get around all that and maybe have even more numbers on certain types of shrimp. But overall, I don't think we need more super crystal blacks. We're meeting that demand on our website. Super crystal reds would be nice to breed more of those, but overall, we're quite happy with the numbers that we get. Most of the pintos, most of the Taiwan bees, Thai bees, all of those are breeding more than what we can really supply until we throw a sale and then get rid of the excess surplus that we don't need anymore. You got anything for me? But doing water changes is certainly going to increase your baby survival rate. Changing the water, having clean water, pristine water, this is going to have the healthier situations for the gills, and the healthy gills means more oxygen that they can pull out of the water. And the more oxygen that they're getting, the faster they're growing, the more breeding that they're doing. Oxygen rate is extremely important. That's why I recommend having some type of filtration. There is ways to get around that with having plants and stuff. But if you have plants, you have a filter, you even add a bubbler with a little air stone in the tank, that is going to get you the maximum oxygen levels that you need for your aquarium. There are also things like little oxidizers that you can put into your aquarium, where it's got a little tube, and you put hydrogen peroxide, H2O2, into it, and it dissolves into hydrogen and oxygen and gives another oxygen source to your shrimp. It's something like we might consider if we only had a couple of aquariums, especially in time of like a power surge and the power went out or something like that. Those would be great on hand. But for us, 400 aquariums, it's just not an option that we were able to use. So for that, we don't use the oxidizers. We don't use air stones. We just use the filters. We've got the air-powered sponge filters, and then we've got them towards the surface, so that way they're agitating the surface of the water and creating the most oxygen in the tank. A lot of people think that it's the actual air bubbles going into the water that puts oxygen into the water column. It's actually the surface tension being broken up on the water column on the top surface that gives it the most oxygen.
Thank you so much, Lake Talent Aquatics, for $1.49 super sticker. It's a bunch of parts. Thank you so much.
So I appreciate that. Thank you. I get sidetracked sometimes. I forget that. Thank you guys. I try to dive right back into it before I forget it. But appreciate that. Thank you. So with the water changes, stay consistent, stay on top of things. You're replacing not just the clean water, but the oxygen levels themselves. When you do a massive water change of like a 50%, and you do water that's all been pumped out of one container into another, or one source from another, it's got a lot more oxygen in it, especially when you're pouring it into the tank. So that certainly helps. But having the filtration, we're doing a video right now in the middle of editing it, where we've got more filtration in a tank than we ever had before. So trying that out to see if that increases baby survival rate even higher. But then also, it is important for us with the Caridina shrimp when we're doing our water changes that we age the water overnight. If we just simply take the minerals and put the 5 scoops or 6 scoops into our trash can of 32 gallons of water, and then we test it in an hour, we're going to get a reading of like 130 to 180. However, if we let that mix in thoroughly overnight, we'll get a more accurate number. And then from there, we can say, all right, we need to add just a little bit of minerals, or maybe we need to add in a little bit of RO water, and we can do our water changes the next day. I've seen in many different scenarios where the minerals are rushed and the water was mixed up and the shrimp are thrown into the situation and they just simply didn't do that well. Where if you take a little bit longer time, you spend that 24 hours or even 16 or 18 hours overnight. Some people only sleep for like 8 hours is more than an hour or 2 or 3 just sitting there and trying to mix it up. So the longer you can wait, the better. No more than a full day, though.
Most people just sleep 8 hours.
Yeah, no, I was just saying you can
You're
mix
like
it
normal 16 hours. Everyone would love to be able to sleep 16 hours.
I'd feel like a stiff board when I woke up. So
well, some of us could use 16 hours for like a little bit.
But try to let it mix up just a little bit more, and you'll get better results and a higher baby survival rate out of that. The whole thing with aging water for Neocaridina, like aging your tap water and stuff like that, a lot of people just do that to simply gas off all the minerals or all of the chlorine, chloramines, and stuff like that. For us, we just add in a little bit of prime, and it not only takes out all of the chlorine, but also neutralizes some of the toxins in the water and the hard metals. So I highly recommend using prime. Some people even use it when they have well water, and they have a lot more success with it. So you never know what's in the water. We don't test for everything, and if prime helps out, you might as well use it. It's cheap. You can buy it in the big containers, and it lasts a really long time. So I highly recommended doing that when you're doing your Neocaridina water changes. And with the Sulawesi, we definitely mix it up the night beforehand. Opaula, not so much. We kind of just mix up the water as soon as it gets around the reading that we want. We kind of just send it. They're super tolerant, and then they can take a little bit of fluctuation in salinity. Got anything? No? All right. So when doing your water changes, I recommend doing at least 10% every week or more. We could do 20 to 40% every week, no problem. We do usually 40 to 60% every 2 to 3 weeks. I'd love to get to the water changes on all of the aquariums every week. I just simply cannot do that. We have too many of them and not enough time in the day. So for us, I try to do 50 aquariums a day when I do water changes, and I try to get all of those done within 8 days, and that's the entire house getting done. But usually those 8 days are broken up into 2 weeks, and I take like 3 days off each week. So for now, that's working out. When we add in more aquariums, I'm of course going to have to do more water changes every day. We've also got the ponds outside, so some days I'm spending a day or two out there, and everything still gets done. If we travel, like we're going to Aquashella Dallas, everything gets done right before we go and head out. But of course, they're going to go like an extra week or so without getting water changes. And I'll make sure when we come back, everything gets hit with like a 60% water change. For us, we have an RO unit, and it fills up a big standing storage container where we're able to fill that up with 250 gallons of RO water. And from there, I pump that out into our trash cans, and I mix those up separately into make sure they all have the 150 total dissolved solids. And then we use that the next day to do all of our water changes on the 50 aquariums. Nothing for me yet? All right. And then we have pumps to be able to pump the water back into all of the aquariums, so we're not lifting any buckets. And we also have a siphon to siphon out all the water with a little bit of attachment, stainless steel mesh guard that goes on the end so it doesn't suck up any babies. And all the water gets ran out into our swimming pool, and our koi and turtles are out there, so that helps replenish the water out there. And they get a little water change action going that way. So, and then consistency is key. Staying on top of doing your water changes every week or every 10 days. Letting it go an extra, week or so isn't that big of a deal. But you want to make sure that things don't change that much. And the best way to do that is having a lid on your aquarium or having an auto top off unit with RO water to constantly go back into your aquarium to take off the water that has been evaporated. If you don't have one of those and you just let your tank drop and drop and drop, and all of a sudden you let your aquarium go 3 weeks without doing a water change, well, the TDS in your water has gone from 150 to 160 to 170 to 180, and then you do your water change and you go back to 140 TDS water, and there's quite a difference there, and that can be a little bit of a shock. Not so much the adults, but that is going to affect the babies on whether it forces them into a molt too early, or maybe they're not able to molt at all. So it's definitely something you're going to want to make sure you keep your tank at the proper levels before you do your water changes. You make sure that all the water levels add up so that the tanks are all at 160 TDS to 150. All the water that you mix up is also going in at that same total dissolved solids. We also set the water and mix it all inside the house. We AC our whole house to around 70, 72 degrees. And because all of the water is already in the house, the next day it is already the right temperature to mix into all of the aquariums. For the Sulawesi, we have a pump in there. It's super powerful, and it is able to actually warm up the water overnight, so that way it matches up to the Sulawesi tanks. So having all the parameters match up is the most important thing. And then, of course, temperature being one of those parameters is very important. If you pour in the water and it's too warm or too cold, this can, maybe not affect the adults, but certainly the baby survival rate.
So Zen said, so do you have the mixture pretty much down now and nailed the 150 ppm every time? Or do you still have a window like between 140 to 160 to be considered okay? Or do you have to get it perfect?
So we pretty much aim for 150 to 160. I have recently just raised the total dissolved solids in the whole house a little bit and noticed that we're getting more breeding definitely in our pinto shrimp. So we went ahead and just did that with all of the shrimp in the house. So now when it mixes from 150, if it says 156, it's fine. If it says 150, it's great. Even if it said 149, I'm probably not really going to mess with it and add any more salt into the equation. But you don't want it to say over 160. I don't want it to get that high. So I would add just a little bit of RO water just to get it back down. I usually keep one of the trash cans full of just RO water, so that way I can take a pitcher of water, and I usually know if it needs a half pitcher or sometimes it needs 2 pitchers. You never know. Sometimes there's a little bit of residue left in the container because the last time you waited a little bit too long to do water changes and some evaporation happened and you didn't need as much salt as last time. So things like that, you add in a little extra RO water and even things out. Back to me. I lost my pen. I don't know where I'm at in my notes. Oh, found it. All right, we're good. So the next thing that I worry about the most with the shrimp and baby survival rate is definitely going to be food. It's one of the most important things in the actual shrimp habitat itself. They should be eating, 60% of their diet should be biofilm. And biofilm's that thin layer of filament that grows over everything. If you have a glass of water and it's sitting out for over an hour, there's biofilm growing around that glass. If there's any light exposed to it whatsoever, and some of them are harmful, some of them you've just built up a tolerance to, and they don't affect you or anything like that. But for the shrimp, that's their main diet. So the more biofilm in the aquarium, the more food that they have, and it's a healthy, good source of food. It's what they should be eating. So to get more biofilm, you increase the amount of surface and area in the aquarium. So any kind of rocks, decor, the filters, the sponges of themselves. So if you have tiny sponges in there and you upgrade to larger sponges, there's going to be more biofilm growing on the sponges. And then plants, moss, all of those are actually going to grow biofilm on them as well. And little tiny microorganisms and stuff like that. And the shrimp are also going to eat those. And they're always constantly grazing. They're never really sleeping. They're never stopping. They're always picking at something. And it looks like they're cleaning, but they're always just tackling and getting some type of biofilm in the aquarium. And then when you're feeding, you're just kind of supplementing that extra food that kind of falls into the rivers out in the nature, because there's not too many items that they can, go and hunt and prey on and eat themselves. And a lot of other things in the river are going to be eating, like the other dead shrimp, the other dead fish and stuff like that. So they are eating things like that from time to time, but very rarely. And then on top of that, you've got bugs and other things that fall into the water that they're also going to be nibbling on: berries, leaves decaying, other matter and stuff like that. So in your aquarium, the commercial shrimp foods that you're feeding into the tank, you don't want to overdo that. You want to just feed enough that ideally they're eating it all in like an hour to 2 hours. If it goes to like 3 hours in my aquariums, I usually don't freak out too much. But after 3 hours, you definitely want to get the net or some type of syringe pipette situation that you can suck out the food and not let it rot and decay, cause ammonia and other problems that are going to affect that baby survival rate and bring down those numbers. So don't overfeed. They don't need to be fed every single day. We feed our shrimp every other day. Sometimes they go, a week. Sometimes they go 2 weeks without getting food. If we're busy traveling and packing before the show and we get back, there's just certain tanks that can go that long with no problem. There's other tanks, of course, where I get super worried about it. We have some Calcio tanks that are jam-packed. If you're looking for Calcios, red or black, buying those off of the website, you're going to get extra shrimp. I'm just telling you right now. So go check those out. But I got to feed those like every single day, or I'm worried that they're going to be looking at the weakest shrimp in the tank and they're going to go after that and pick it off. Sometimes there's an old adult that, just molted. It's nice and squishy, just like crabs. When they shed their molt, they are super soft. And ideally, that is when they are the weakest, and the other shrimp will prey on them. And the smaller they are, the weaker they are. So if the shrimp don't have a good food source in the aquarium, they're going to go after the babies and start picking them off and eating them themselves. People want to sit there and argue with me that scuds won't eat, baby shrimp. Shrimp will eat baby shrimp if their diet requires it and they're not being fed appropriately. I would like to do a tank where we take, 10 scuds or a nice colony of scuds, and then like 10 baby, and Shelby insisted on them being wild Neocaridina shrimp, and putting them into a tank. And then after 2 or 3 weeks, we see how many of them are still left. I'd like to do the same thing with assassin snails, and do it also with like the isopods, just to like double check to make sure that they're, friendly. And then maybe, some fish just for kicks, and like some Otocinclus or something like that. You know what I mean? Something else, something different. All right. And give me a look. I know, but
You
how
have
are they?
bigger fish
Are
for
they?
shrimp
Are they
in a bigger
eating the
tank.
babies? How many
You'd
babies are
have to
getting
fill the
eaten?
tank.
Yeah, I mean, after a week, we'll see how many are left and just
We're
film
still
that.
having them breed in the 155.
Yeah.
Swordtails.
But are you sure? You go ahead.
Welcome in, Crypt Keeper. Finally got some time off of being a slave for the work. Member for 23 months. Thank you so much. Says, what's up, shrimp nerds?
Why you
Thanks
gotta
for
call us
joining
nerds?
us.
It really hurts.
He's including himself. He knows that.
I'm just kidding. Definitely a shrimp nerd. Not a plant nerd though, not yet.
Welcome in.
So don't overfeed, but make sure they get enough food that they're not cannibalizing and eating each other. That is where you want to meet that fine line to have that ultimate baby survival rate. And then now there's several different methods. We have our own cycle method, we have our own feeding regimen, we have our own way we like to set up our aquariums, etc. Everybody has their own methods and their way of breeding shrimp. For us, I was feeding a mixture of powdered foods and bacterias. I was, testing out small amounts, large amounts, but pretty much using it in all of our aquariums for several years, trying to figure out the best powdered food. And, one day I just ran out of powdered foods and I was like, you know what? Let's try it and see how they do without the powdered foods and just feed a little bit more of the actual pellets. And that is when a lot of my hair allergy issues stopped and a lot of our baby survival rates went up instead of going down like I thought they would. So for us, having cleaner aquariums with less nitrates, less nitrites. I almost said it. I almost said nurite snails and ammonia. And having the cleaner water, of course, less algae. And you might think algae is a great food source for shrimp. Well, algae actually, as it's growing and thriving, the shrimp don't like to eat it. The shrimp like to eat the algae when it's going through that. A lot of algae will do really good at times and bad at times. And when it's doing really bad and dying off, the shrimp are eating it. And it makes it look like the shrimp are, killing and eating off the algae. When reality is you probably did a water change or the light was left off for too long or something happened where your cycle took up and you stopped overfeeding and all of a sudden the algae went down and it looked like the shrimp did it, but all they were really doing is eating whatever's dead and decaying in the tank, which they will do, but they will not eat growing, thriving algae. And we were actually in this one pet store and they're having issues with their baby shrimp and their shrimp in general. And when I went and checked them out, every single tank was jam-packed with hair algae. And you can actually see how skinny and deprived of nutrients the shrimp were. And they were tangled up and stuck in this hair algae and not able to get enough food and literally dying of starvation in these clumps of hair algae that were just chock block full of the tank. So hair algae can actually kill your shrimp rather than feed your shrimp. So another example is like people take hair algae from one aquarium and then throw it into their shrimp tank because the shrimp eat it and they're feeding it to their aquarium. Well, the algae just isn't able to live and thrive in that aquarium. And when you throw it in there, it starts dying off and then the shrimp start eating it. So that shrimp tank is a very healthy aquarium. Shrimp are a very low bioload. So you really shouldn't have any algae in the aquarium. For us, the algae growing on the fronts of the tanks and the sides of the aquariums and stuff like that, that's going to happen. There's also this algae in this aquarium. It's like a kleb. Even though this tank's over a year old, we've only had fish in there. We haven't really put any shrimp in there to really take care of it. And it really is something that happens a lot in these aqua soil, low pH aquariums. And it's not really an aggressive, invasive style algae. It's more just something that's there from overfeeding. And we like to feed the fish.
The algae on the side of the glass is a good example of your shrimp are not eating algae. Like if they were eating it, that would all be gone. They're eating the biofilm, like you said, that grows on that, which creates it's good. So that's why we keep green walls for it. Like there's nothing wrong with it. The hair algae is a problem because, like you said, the babies do get caught up on it and it's sucking too much nutrients. So you do want to keep the level down. But like the green walls on the tanks are great for anything like that because it's just biofilm and things for like snails to crawl across. Zach said pom-pom crabs do not like isopods. Fun fact, just in case you are wondering.
They don't like them,
Nope.
as in like they get scared of them and then they freak out, or
I
like
would
they
assume
eat
they
them.
don't eat them. So
Oh.
they're living together in
Oh.
harmony.
Well,
Yeah.
the pom-pom crabs are filter
Filter feeders,
feeders,
yeah.
so I would say those and the micro crabs would be fine.
Abstract said, what is the craziest thing you do in the aquarium trade that would be considered a no-no but works for you?
I don't think there's anything crazy that we do other than having this many aquariums in a house. Like, I think that's it. It's
Yeah.
just having this many aquariums. Everybody thinks we're crazy, but it saves us a lot of time. I don't have any commute to get to my job. I'm able to work all day, get the kids from school, help the kids with their homework. Shelby does most of that. I try. And then, I help Layla with volleyball and get to play a lot with the kids, where if we were at a shop or something like that, I'd have a lot less time to spend with the family. We spend a lot of time, going to different places around town and hanging out and doing different things. So
That
it works
was a
out.
long-winded answer for that. That was not needed, half of that. But okay.
You're so mean to me lately.
Just getting you back on topic. Christy S., member for 13 months. Thank you so much. Says, replace tank or just the amount of H2O change with SM?
Don't know what SM stands for. Do you?
I'm trying to guess.
So here's the thing. We've had several different aquariums where certain shrimp didn't do very well in those, and then we just swapped them out into
Shrimp
a different
minerals.
tank.
A replace tank or just the amount of H2O change with shrimp minerals?
I would need to know more details about the aquarium before I suggest a suggestion. But feel free, if you're having issues with a certain aquarium, hit us with what type of shrimp you're trying to do and what type of parameters are in the aquarium. But adding in extra filtration is always going to be an addition, and the extra oxygen is also going to reduce the algae levels as well.
And then Crypt Keeper said, are there any moss varieties that babies can get caught in, or is it just only algae that it happens?
I think for the most part, it's just the hair algae itself that they get tangled up in. I haven't witnessed it with any of the moss, and we pull out a lot of moss. And I've never broken apart moss or shook out moss and there was a dead shrimp in there. So like if we find a dead shrimp or something like that, it's almost always on the floor or underneath the moss or something. It's never in the moss. So
they never get trapped. I think it's because moss is generally softer than the hair algae would be. Usually that's really coarse, and that gets stuck under their gills sometimes. Fish have that problem with the gills too. But the only other algae that I would see is the blue-green algae. Definitely has issues, but I don't see it much with shrimp, but fish, it definitely has problems.
I'll ask Coro's question. I'm ready.
Coro said, sorry. Obaula eat algae. I need to go to bed.
Yeah, they'll eat dead algae like the rest of the shrimp do, but we grow algae in our Opaula tank, and it's growing, and they're not eating it or consuming it. So if you buy Opaula and you watch the stream, remember in the notes, put I'd like a little piece of macroalgae, and I will throw some in. I think it's Chaeto. I don't know. Chaeto is the one that looks like Sawasate. I can't remember the one we have,
This is
but
like
it's real stringy, like hair algae, but not hair algae. It's stiffer than Cladophora.
Yeah, it doesn't grow crazy. It's really cool. I guess in the right
And
parameters.
in really
it
low
could.
light, it's growing
Yeah.
very, very slowly.
Dr. Anthony said you are crazy.
Well,
Just to make sure you
from
know.
anyone else, I wouldn't be that offended, but from you, it's an insult. Just kidding, Doc.
Jesse, welcome in. Says Grant Shelby, how are all y'all? Hope it all is great. Grant, what shrimp should I do outdoor up here in Pennsylvania?
Any Neocaridina, but I have some drawbacks on doing some of the Neocaridina outside. Greens is super hard. Red Rillies, any Rillies are just difficult. Chocolates or Black Rose would be the next one that I wouldn't recommend. Literally everything else is super easy outside. The reason why I don't recommend greens, Black Rose, or Rillies is because you always have that one male that's in the back having all the babies, and all the babies come out ugly. So you got to have a way to get that one ugly one out of there. Where with the yellows, the red cherries, the blues, even if one of the ugly ones ends up having babies with one of the nicer ones, you seem to still get a good mix. But the greens, they just throw so many culls already, that when you have a cull breed with a nice one, it's like so many culls. And same with the Rillies, same with the Black Rose. So those are a lot harder to do. We have a Black Rose pond outside. We have 3 of them actually, and it's the easiest one to manage. The Rillies, the greens, they all came inside because it was just too difficult out in the big ponds.
Chrissy said meant to replace 40 grams of shrimp minerals, or example 40% water change work.
I don't know if it's a gram to a gallon or however many. You've got to read the back of the label. I believe it's 1 spoonful for 5 gallons of water.
And then Abstract, does anyone know how to cultivate blackbeard algae? Want to do an aquascape with it? I would say see if you can get it from someone if you don't have it. But if you do have it, dirty filters, low flow.
No, high flow.
Oh, high flow.
High
yeah,
flow.
It comes out of the really high
flow.
flow, but dirty tank.
Yeah, you want super high flow, and make sure that no hydrogen peroxide goes in the aquarium. But yeah, high flow. Somebody said if you want one, take like one of those 40 hang on the back filters, throw in extra food, like turn it into like a snail aquarium, because the snails aren't going to eat the blackbeard algae. They're going to eat the food. They're going to make waste, and the high flow is going to feed that blackbeard algae. And it'll come from nothing. You don't need to introduce blackbeard algae into your aquarium. It can come from just a low carbon CO2 environment.
Brandon said it's tongue twisters say Opa Ula eat algae, don't they? And I barely said it right the first time. And then Dr. Anthony said that CH in science is pronounced as a K, so it would be Kato.
Kato.
And Brandon
I
said
swear.
it is stringy, and I need some for my Zoa tank if I ever get Opulas.
Okay, well, it's Kato, and I swear I've heard all of the the saltwater realm call it Chato when I hear it. So I will say the right terminology now, and I'll correct them. I'll be like, you salties don't even know it's Kato. Come on.
Mark said, is it just my TV, or does Grant look like he's glowing with shrimp wisdom from the heavens?
I think it is a little bit brighter today. I don't know why.
Yeah. I just came up with a great costume. If we ever had a Halloween costume thing with like Aquashella or something event, you should just dye your beard black. And just be like, I have a costume on. I'm Blackbeard Algae. And short says algae, I guess. That would be great.
Okay.
It'd be hilarious.
Back to me?
Yeah, I guess
right.
so.
Jesus. So, the next thing I always like to talk about would be leaves. For us, I don't really see a point in adding in 2 Indian almond leaves to all of the aquariums. It'd be a lot of time and maintenance. There's a lot of mulm breakdown. We'd prefer not to have mulm. If we only had a couple of aquariums, I wouldn't mind having a bunch of cholla wood, throwing in Indian almond leaves and all their cones and all this other stuff into the aquarium. But since we have 300 plus shrimp tanks, I like to keep them nice and clean. We don't like to add any of that. But with the Indian almond leaves, I do think they actually provide a good amount of antifungal and antibacterial properties that they add into the water column. It helps improve the immune system of the shrimp, and that is all just going to help increase the baby survival rate. If you don't have any fungal issues or bacterial issues, and you have, a good amount of nutrition in your shrimp foods, you don't necessarily need the leaves. And I think that's why if we added any leaves to our aquariums, we wouldn't really be having much. I don't think it would pay for itself by adding in $400 worth of leaves every month. However, for a beginner, somebody that might be overfeeding or got new shrimp from somebody, the Indian almond leaves is definitely something that can add a little bit of benefit to the aquarium, and you could actually see some higher baby survival rate. Certainly, if you're not getting high baby survival rate and you've done everything up to this point that I've recommended before, try some Indian almond leaves into the aquarium and see if they help out. I don't really believe in any of the other botanicals that are out there, like the pods and stuff like that. We might carry some of them on our website for those people that just like the look, for the aquascaping and having the black water and stuff like that. But unless you have a really bad bacterial and you need real thick black water or like some cories or something like that, who knows? Maybe the key to getting the Maculabrachium Peruvian little tiny purple shrimp that we had to breed was just to dump a ton of botanicals into the tank and just get it real black water. Next time we'll try that, and I'll have a bunch of botanicals on hand for that. We'll be probably adding in some Indian almond leaves onto the website in the near future too.
Skipper Aquariums, member for 5 months. Thank you so much. Says, get her done.
So I haven't brought this up on the live stream yet, Skipper, but I came down to hang out with Skipper one night because he guilt tripped me into it. And then he disappeared after I went back to the hotel room, got back ready, went down to go enjoy some time with Skipper, and he was a no-show. Not gonna
He
forget.
probably thought you weren't coming back down or forgot that he asked you. Brandon said, my shrimp have white fungus. I've been doing Primafix for a week and it hasn't gone away. Should I start round 2 or something else? Almond leaves?
I would like to see this white fungus. If you could send me a picture of it, that would really help. Fun fact, somebody once upon a time at like 11:30 at night that just bought some shrimp off of us, maybe like a week or 3 weeks at the most. It was within a short amount of time that they had just bought the shrimp off of us. But they go, oh, my shrimp has some fungus. And I freaked out. I was like, no. One of the things that I pride ourselves on the most is that we don't have any of the fungus issues in our shrimp outside. And like, there's a little bit of debate on whether it's a fungus or an allergy, but the ELO, I don't know the rest of the name, but it's that really green fuzzy stuff that grows on the bottom of the shrimp on a lot of the imported shrimp, and ours don't have it. So when somebody said that they had some fungus, Grant found a flashlight and was up until 4 o'clock in the morning, pretty much catching as many shrimp as he could and trying to look for the fungus. Started with the shrimp that they had purchased and just totally went through everything. And then they finally woke up the next day and then responded, oh, no, it's not green, it's white, and it was a stuck molt. So you might not have a fungus issue. Maybe you have a molt issue. The other thing is, like, one of our favorite foods is the mineral junkie. But when you feed shrimp like the blue velvets, they look like they have a bacterial infection after they eat this because their whole bodies turn white. Like, They don't digest it at all. It just turns their whole body into this white coloration. And if you didn't know that they had just eaten that food, one would think that they had muscular necrosis or a bacterial infection. So if you could send me some pictures, I've never actually witnessed white fungus on shrimp. The other thing is it could be Scutellaria.
That's what I just said. Oh,
Yeah.
That's what the other Brandon said. It's
Um,
on their nose.
but like that's not a fungus. That thing is a living creature that's like moving most of the time. They're
Yeah.
like little spikes.
Does the cure fix that? Or
Don't
just
think
bacterial?
the cure fixes that. That's a question for Plamsky. But salt dips, I believe, are the
Yeah,
best way to get
for
rid of that.
one.
We've
Mhm.
never actually had a treat for that. And then the other thing is Paragard. That's the only other thing that I know that some of the importers use for all of their Neocaridina shrimp that have any type of fungus or parasite.
It's probably the
It says it's not invertebrate safe, so use it sparingly.
It looks like they're growing a white beard on their face, which is probably the Scutellaria if it's coming out the nostrum. So
Man, once upon a time I tried to learn
Doesn't
how
go
to
down.
say this.
Scutellaria japonica. Not even
Japonica.
close.
That's how you say that part.
Yeah. And then Skipper said, "Oh, you did bring it up, and Shelby is right."
Oh.
And then Abstract said, "Skipper skipped on you." And then
Ooh.
Heather said, "Grant has told the story before about Skipper skipping out on him."
Oh, I guess we both are forgetful. I won't bring it up again.
Who's both? He remembers.
Oh, I remember,
saying
but he
both.
forgot. He's saying he forgot that he got me to come down. You said you were right.
Oh, yeah.
You're forgetful too. It's okay. You're part of the group.
No.
All right, so we talked about leaves. Indian almond leaves are a go. Maybe guava leaves can have some type of benefit. The mulberry leaves, I like them. I kind of glanced at a mulberry tree at one of the plant sellers that we saw just recently at the farmer's market. Didn't see any mulberry trees, but I do like having a mulberry tree in the backyard and picking the leaves off and feeding them to the shrimp. So they're good food and they devour it quickly, just like spinach. Spinach would be a great food. Just for a little teaser for you guys, we're setting up a high-tech Caridina tank, and in the end we might have some type of aquaponics setup connected to it where we grow like little spinach and stuff like that, and so it'll be like a direct food source for the shrimp from the own tank, its own tank. So that'll be a lot of fun. Another thing that's going to help a baby survival rate is going to be tank size. Overall, the bigger, the larger the aquarium, the easier it is to maintain stable, consistent water parameters. If you're doing a 1 gallon tank and you have an inch of evaporation, that's a 10% change. If it's a 10-inch tank, that's a 10% change in total dissolved solids. So the bigger the aquarium, the less change and effect you have on swings when you do water changes and stuff like that. So, and also from overfeeding and stuff like that, the more water, the less ammonia and stuff that's going to build up in a larger aquarium.
Abstract said, "Would hibiscus flowers be a good food for shrimp?"
You just got to be careful where the flowers are getting their nutrients from. If you're using a heavy fertilizer, a heavy pesticide in the soil, I would avoid using that. For us, we did a lot of chameleons, and we made sure we used all organic potting soil, and then we used fish emulsion as the fertilizers for the plants. And with that, we were able to get an okay amount of flowers, but not like a ton. Most of the time when you see a lot of hibiscus flowers, they've had some type of like super bloom or some type of fertilizer to get nice, big, beautiful bundles of flowers.
I
This
would
is
say
a lot of yawning
you could
for
probably
50 minutes into this.
No, I'm almost done for. I would say that you might be able to boil the hibiscus. I would cut off like the middle of it and then boil the things, and then it'd probably be fine. Take off the green part and just use the petals of the flower probably.
But we used to feed hibiscus flowers, the stem, the stalk, everything to crickets, and then feed those to our chameleons. So I imagine it would be a good food source. Back to me. So the bigger the tank, the better. And then filters, the more filtration, the more flow, the more oxygen. I already talked about that. The more babies you're going to get. It's just going to help maintain, keep the water cleaner. The cleaner the water, the more babies you're going to get. That's just been the way it has for us. There's some people where real dirty tanks. The Stardust, I could argue with, like, the more food we dump into the tank, the more babies. But like that's just because there's like 1,000 shrimp in that 10-gallon tank, and that's the way it is with the raccoons. And there's just so many shrimp in there that when you feed them, they devour it all within 2 hours. So the water does the water clarity and stuff like that is kind of affected, where they're not as clean and clear as the rest of the tanks. But I think they would prefer crystal clear water. If that was a possibility, we can go with a bigger aquarium. We do have a 55-gallon right here where the water does stay nice and crystal clear and isn't a problem. But the 10-gallon tanks, we feed them a lot of food, but we do get a lot of Stardust babies. There's a lot of adults in there. There's always buried females in there. So it is one of the tanks that seems a little dirty, but I think they would prefer the cleaner water. So maybe adding another filter in there would help out, but I don't think we need more Stardust babies unless some pet store wants to pick them up wholesale, because we got 3 tanks that probably all have more than 1,000 shrimp in each one. And then not touching the substrate is a big one for me. That can cause muscular necrosis or a bacterial infection, like I talked about before. And by doing, trimming and replanting and, moving and rescaping, or even just pulling out a crypt or something like that out of the substrate, what ends up happening is that root structure, the substrate shifts, and there's pockets of gases from uneaten food and shrimp waste, snail waste, all different types of things. And when you release those pockets into the water column, the shrimp can get sick off of that. Their immune system is compromised, and the next thing you know, you've got this domino effect where a couple of shrimp are dying every day. You're not having a mass colony wipe out. The way you're having a bacterial infection is there's constant death happening, but it's not the entire colony. You have an entire colony wipe out when there's bad parameters or, some type of spike in parameters or something like that. If you're having, a couple deaths here and there, you're either having a bacterial infection or you're having molting issues where there's not enough minerals in the water. They're not getting enough calcium in their diet. And so what's happening is a shrimp is dying when it's trying to molt, and they all molt at different rates, because as they grow out of one shell, they molt it off to form another shell. And if they can't molt, then they kind of get stuck in their tiny jacket and die.
Dixon Design says, I have spruce pine trees in the front yard. Can I use the cones in my tank? No, they have pine sap in them.
Yeah, so the alder cones don't have a high sap content in them, where the other pine cones, they just, the sap in them, the sugar content, it's just not a good thing to have in the aquarium. And it's not recommended you add any type of pine whatsoever into the aquariums.
Yeah, a lot of people seem to have issues with it. It's not something most people notice because people put like pine needles, because you'll see them in the water out in the wild. But in a smaller concentrated tank, it can go wrong really bad. Yeah. Coro Works had put a bamboo shrimp in the panda tank. Oh, I get it. It took me a minute. That would be so cute, though. Bamboo shrimp are, they're filter feeders. You definitely got to feed them correctly. So that's why we don't really do those. They do like powder foods and things like that.
I have seen somebody was able to breed them in captivity, So I might try to breed some bamboo shrimp in the future. But before that one post, I didn't think they were able to breed in captivity, but they're still at a super low baby survival rate. So I think they do a lot better if you can go from brackish to salt. I just think some of the larvae are able to find enough food in a freshwater ecosystem. And that's the thing. There's a lot more microorganisms in saltwater than there is fresh. And there's even more in brackish than there is fresh too. So
Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry. Gnarly said, when do you use Aquachar?
oh no, it's not the shirt. That was the last week. So Aquachar for us is a medicine cabinet type product. First time we had to use it was when flea meds got on the dogs. The hair that fell off of the dogs that got the flea meds on them got into the tank and ended up getting all the shrimp poison basically. Threw in the Aquachar, and within a minute, the shrimp that were acting lethargic and on their backs, struggling to breathe and live, were walking around just fine, like nothing had ever happened. The other times would be, and I'll get into this actually, and I'll just talk about it right now. So when you have chemicals like your girlfriend sprays Febreze, or your boyfriend sprays too much cologne, or your girlfriend puts on perfume, or some type of chemical that gets into the air, Lysol, whatever is actually going to change what you can smell in the air that comes out of a can. If you're cooking steaks to change the aroma in the room, steaks are good. They're not going to mess up your shrimp. But the stuff in the aerosol cans and stuff like that, scented candles, wax strips, stuff that's purposely putting chemicals into the air, and that's what they're designed to do. They're doing their job. Those contaminants can get into the shrimp tank, and the thing is they're bonders and they're binders, and they also got chemicals in them too. So if the chemical doesn't kill the shrimp as a poison, the bonders get stuck to the little tiny hairs that are on the shrimp, and then they can't eat, they can't breathe, it gets on the gills can't open up. So a lot of these things are not good to be around your shrimp aquariums and stuff like that. And in those situations, throw in some Aquachar, open up the windows, turn on the fans, get some circulation in the rooms, and your shrimp should be just fine. The Aquachar you can leave in the aquariums exponentially. You don't have to worry about taking it out. And it's a better option for me than activated carbon that does break down. You need to have it in a little bag. You got to get it out and replace it every month. The Aquachar, you can just take it out of the aquarium when you're done, clean it off with some hydrogen peroxide, recharge it basically, and use it again when you need it in the future. You got anything else for me?
Yep. I lost it.
All right. So back to substrates. Old substrate is definitely going to be a silent killer. This is kind of where you want to pay attention to your pH test. Maybe check them every month if you really want to be on top of your baby survival rate. For us, I kind of just pay attention to the shrimp. When the shrimp stop getting buried as much, or like I'll notice the baby survival rate dropped or something like that, then I for sure will check the pH. By that, I'll ask Shelby nicely if she can go check the pH for me. And then majority of the time, it's the older substrates, the aquariums that we've had for a very long time. After 5 years, after 6 years for sure, the pH just starts to climb. When you buy substrate at first, it can start into a big ball like this. And then over time, as it's buffering, it's shrinking and breaking down from the erosion. But that erosion is what's adding in the buffering capability element into the water, and that is lowering your pH. So as the pH gets lowered over time with water changes, you're actually taking out that buffering ability, and your pH is going to start to climb. Once it gets around 6.5, that's when I see baby survival rate for a lot of the different Caridina shrimp start to go down. You don't have to worry about this for Neocaridina or the Sulawesi with the crushed coral. that is pretty much, a lifetime supply of calcium for the shrimp. But the aqua soil kind of needs to be replaced after a year for some substrates or 5 years, like we're getting out of the Brightwell substrate. So keep an eye on your pH levels. That might be a sign that you've got to replace your substrate, swap it out, set up a new tank, move the shrimp over is usually the best option to do that.
Coro said I meant bamboo shrimp in the raccoon tank because they were messy eaters. If we had
We thought you were making a joke.
It would be great though. If we had higher flow in the raccoon tank, maybe. But with the sponge filters, that's not enough flow for bamboo shrimp. They have to really have high flow for their little fins to work really good.
We should do bamboo shrimp in the 30. They'd be like little monsters on the mountains. You don't know what the 30 is. It's a secret. Oh no, I already shared it.
What 30?
The shrimp Ultra 30.
The little tiny thing?
Yeah, it's got a lot of filtration in it though.
Absolutely not. Like one shrimp in there.
Like a pair. See if
Johnny said, what would be normal GH and KH for Neo shrimps?
I like 7 GH and 3 KH for Neocaridina. I feel like that is optimal. Any higher isn't needed. Any lower than 4 GH is definitely, you're going to have some baby survival rate issues. I feel like below 5 GH and you start getting less babies.
So Zach said, do you guys breed any fish? I was curious if there are going to be any for sale on the website. So I stopped breeding any fish currently. The only thing we might have come up on the website is going to be like rice fish, maybe some guppies coming up in
Some
like
endlers.
the next couple months. Easy, breeders. We do get them from Richard and Gary. We get different kinds of fish, and we put those on our website. Those are homebred in the state of Florida, and then we get them and resell them on our site. So we'll probably get some CPDs again.
When
maybe
we get
some
back,
rainbows, but
when we get back from Aquashella, I plan on setting a couple bins outside and really going after the rice fish. And Shelby's guppies are still holding down some tanks inside, but we got to get them outside. And after Aquashella, we'll probably work on the fish a lot more. But right now, it's getting things ready for Aquashella. We're doing small things on getting Shelby's fish room ready. I know it seems like we're taking forever to get that done.
so long.
It's just there's a lot of other things going on, and we're putting out fires that we didn't think would pop up and taking care of that. Like the kids being sick. Layla's missed 3 days of school, and she never misses school. So
This is like the worst time because they're all doing their testing. So it's stressful for everyone.
I think
working a
she's
little
trying to
bit
get out of
more.
doing the test at this point because after a little Olive Garden, she was fine.
Yeah. Mike said, can Amanos be born in freshwater? So that was the conversation that me and Crip was having with a lady that they were born. I can't remember now if it's the opposite. They breed in freshwater, and then you have to hatch the babies in saltwater, and then you can move the babies back to freshwater once they become a certain, like a juvie, and then create that again. And that's the problem with Amanos, is having to do that extra work.
So I think if I had a saltwater setup, what I would do is I would take the Amano shrimp, put it in a breeder box, and then you'd wait for the Amano to release the babies into the water column. And then I would take the breeder box and move it onto a brackish water system, let the water replenish and flow out into a brackish water tank. And then I would dose that brackish water tank heavily with zooplankton or whatever you can feed it with. And then once they grow up, move them back into freshwater. There have been a couple of rare occasions where people have claimed, I only bought 5 Amanos and I tore down the tank and now I have 7 Amanos. Well, maybe your significant other killed some of your shrimp, didn't know how many he killed, and replaced them. There's all these different scenarios where something like that possibly could have happened. But then at the other time, survival of the fittest. Maybe 2 larvae did manage to survive, had found enough food that they were able to grow up in freshwater. And that's what I think it is in a freshwater column, there just isn't enough plankton and microorganisms floating around that the larvae stage of the Amano shrimp can survive and live. I think that's why Opa Ula aren't a freshwater shrimp, is because there needs to be more organisms surviving in that brackish environment. And I think there is just enough for Opa Ula. And it would be cool maybe to take some Amanos or some Rudolph, the red-nosed Pinocchio shrimp, or the bamboos, and move them into a brackish tank and see if you can't get those babies. But I think it almost is. You have to catch the babies once they're free-flowing, because what happens is they go from a freshwater river and get flushed out into the brackish or saltwater environment where they become filter feeders in the water column before they grow up into shrimp.
Hugo Film says, are the green emeralds ready?
The green emeralds are not ready. They're going to be a little bit. I've got a wait list, so if you want to get on the green emeralds, you're going to have to let me know. Robert Downey Jr. is first on the wait list.
And Johnny said, this content hit me at the right moment. Everything you're saying is what I was going to ask, and you nailed it. That's why I love my brother.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
And then Brandon said he sent a picture to you. Coro said, can y'all get Florida flagfish females? We can. They're just not as common as the males. Like, I definitely catch way more males than females. Those will hopefully be available this year. I definitely already have some. Just waiting for our permits to sell certain ones. Most of those ones will be wild caught. Those will be listed as wild caught on our website when we do start to have them available. And then some of them that are captive bred.
That is crazy. That is like a whitebeard fungus. I've never seen it that bad. It might be Scutalilia,
No,
but
that is not.
there's like 13 or 17 different types of Scutalilia. So it might be a variety of it.
I just want to throw that shrimp
Yeah.
away.
So for those that would like to see what I'm talking
Oh.
about, that shrimp, you might as well call him Whitebeard from One Piece, because he's on his last leg. I mean, I don't know if it kills the shrimp like that or what, but that looks like it's too far gone. Where did you get those shrimp? Or like, you've got water lettuce in there, so I worry that like a lot of the water lettuce comes here from Florida, and a lot. I've never seen it that bad, but I've seen Scutalilia on the crawfish and stuff in some of the rivers and lakes. So you definitely want to be careful when buying plants off of certain vendors and stuff like that. You never know where they came from. So
Vorticilla.
Vorticilla.
Parasite. Looks like white fungus or mold growth. It's actually a protozoa of 16 known species, not a fungus at all.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I think you're going to want to have to treat that with some Paragard to get that out of there, but I'd love some more information on where that popped up from.
Wow. So salt bath with aquarium salts, and make sure it doesn't have iodine in it. It says 1 teaspoon to 1 cup of clean tank water, not tap water, 30 seconds to 1 minute, and you might need to repeat this a couple times until it disappears. And it says that it's poor. It can happen from poor water conditions, increased water change frequency. That's crazy. I would also just separate it and put it in a different tank for now, like any of them that you see infected, and then just do a ton of water changes on your tank for a little bit, and it might help keep it away. For
sure, be really careful. Whatever you touch with that tank, you don't want to touch anything with other tanks, or else they'll get infected as well. You want to make sure no water or anything like that goes from that tank into any others, because it's super contagious. So cross-contamination prevention for sure.
Coro, the females actually have less coloration than the male flagfish. They'll be really dull. And then Gnarly says, one more bother, if I may. Are the tourmaline balls worth the buy?
Okay, those are also on the list. So, let's talk about those. So, for us, in the very beginning, we bought a lot of them. We got several different brands. In the beginning, they were stupid expensive. And a lot of different sellers and brands came out, and the price of them have gone down. But in the very beginning, we bought a bunch of different kinds, and almost none of them affected the shrimp whatsoever to where there was an increase in breeding that we noticed at all. So I would not spend any money on getting any of the mineral balls or tourmaline balls or anything like that. For me, a better shrimp food, a better variety of shrimp foods, and just using a good enough shrimp mineral and having the proper minerals already in your water is better than some ball that lasts forever. They don't shrink. I can go grab the original ones that we bought today out of the aquariums, and they're like the same size. So I think it's an inert material that, if anything, they just got porous little holes for biofilm to grow.
Kuko Film said, what's your guys' opinion on Petco shrimp? That's the only option we have here on the edge of Texas.
Well, it's not your only option because we do ship.
He knows.
So I would avoid getting shrimp from pet stores where they're imported. And Petco, Pet Supermarket, PetSmart, if they have shrimp in them, chances are they're not from a home breeder. There are local pet stores around in certain areas that do carry homebred shrimp, and those should be all right. But for me, if buying shrimp from the pet store is this hard to keep, then buying homebred shrimp is like way less harder. There's different levels to being able to keep shrimp, and the imported just adds in such a higher amount of issues and risk that you just don't need, because a lot of times the Petco shrimp are more expensive too. So if you just tough it out and maybe have to pay a little bit more money for shipping or something like that, you can get a little bit healthier shrimp. But I know it is tempting to go into a Petco and you see a big group of shrimp in it, and there's a couple buried females and stuff like that. But a lot of times there's multiple different colors in that tank too, and you don't know who the father is, and it's like it's not always worth it in the end if you come home and you've got shrimp that look like the one we just showed, or to have the green fungus or something like that, because they don't really practice the best quarantine cross-contamination practices. They're all in one setup. So it's not that I want to shoot down Petco, because they do have the $1 per gallon sale, and they are a huge part of our hobby. There's definitely stuff to go into Petco to buy for shrimp keeping, but the actual shrimp themselves, if it's your only option, of course buy them. But if you can pay for shipping, use a credit card online, then yeah, go for that over the Petco shrimp. I'm not even saying buy from us. There's plenty of home breeders that sell online these days.
And I don't know where the edge of Texas you are, but there are quite a bit of different people in Texas that are pretty like in the area, even if it's like worth an hour drive for you, or
we'll be in Texas.
Yeah.
Not next week. Next week?
2 weeks.
In 2 weeks, pretty much next week. The next Wednesday we'll be in Texas.
What?
Next week.
You're lying.
These shows really creep up on you fast. So yeah, we've got the ability for you to buy shrimp off of us if you want to come check us out at Dallas Aquashella, and it's in 2 weeks. So you only have 9 days to sign up for the shrimp contest. If you are a shrimp breeder and you're looking for an increase in your reputation, you want to be able to sell your shrimp for more money, you want your shrimp in more demand, winning one of these contests certainly puts you ahead of the rest of the pack when it comes to demand for your shrimp. So I highly recommend getting into the contest. We do actually have a good amount of entries now. I don't know, however, what shrimp are in what groups. I will have that all though figured out next week, where I will say, hey, if you've got some crystal shrimp, or if you've got, I can almost guarantee you we don't have enough orange-eyed morphs be entered in the contest. But getting your shrimp into the contest, getting your name out there. Crypt Keeper is going to do a video on the shrimp contest itself. I'm going to promote it, and it's going to be a really good show because Dimax is sponsoring it. They're putting a lot of effort and different things into this contest that we don't normally have, so it'll be a lot of fun. And it should be a better contest overall. Back to me.
Mm-hmm.
So the next thing I want to consider is the age of shrimp. Baby survival rate and the amount of babies is, of course, different. But if you're going to consider baby survival rate from the eggs before they hatch, well, then the age of the shrimp definitely matters, because the larger, more mature, older females, they just have more experience and they're able to carry more eggs. They're able to hold them. And what means is a lot of first-time moms, it's not uncommon for them to drop all their eggs. It's not uncommon for them to molt early, and the molt has all the eggs on it, or just a random patch of eggs on the floor left over from one of the first-time moms. It can happen. They're just bad at it. They don't know how to hold all the eggs or all the muffins and keep fluffing them throughout the entire 30-day period. So what ends up happening is the older they are, the better they get, the better survival rate you're going to have. So if you're buying your shrimp and then 2 months later you get pregnant ones, and then, you have 6 pregnant ones, and then, a month after that, you're really not seeing a lot of babies, well, chances are a good amount of those females drop their eggs at some point during that egg incubation. The eggs get eaten. They're a delicacy. They're a snack. They get eaten really fast. If a pregnant female dies, the eggs are the first thing to get devoured. So a lot of times you won't even know that the female dropped her eggs, but after the second time, they've usually gotten the hang of it. They can hold on the eggs for longer, and that will give you more babies in the end. You all right? You're fading.
Oh, yeah. Dixon, my question is, do you have Caridina or Neos? Because 8.2 isn't too bad for Neo Caridina, and the parameters shouldn't be too bad. And you said they're just dying off slowly. That usually doesn't mean that the parameters are bad. It's something else killing them. Like, I don't know, instead of breeder in Oregon. I just don't know if it has a bacteria. If any of them are looking a little white right before they die, it is Neos and Jades. If they're looking a little milky, it might be bacteria from moving from one tank to another. I don't know if that breeder was tearing that tank down. Sometimes they can get bacteria and slowly die off, or molting issues would be another thing. But
your water's not that hard, though,
yeah,
because we have literally oodles and boodles of Neocaridina breeding with our Sulawesi tanks that we are looking for different varieties of Sulawesi shrimp to put in them. But for the meantime, we've been buying some Neo colonies from different people to try and add different varieties outside, and they've been breeding and producing like rabbits in the warmer water, the higher pH, the harder water overall. So the water issues don't seem to be a problem from what you're reading. I would say with Shelby, a lot of times we've noticed this where people will try and just take a big old net and drag it through the trenches and try and catch as many shrimp as you can. The reason why we sell these little shrimp nets and whatnot is because they're smaller. You're able to grab 1 or 2 shrimp at a time and not pick up any substrate. You're able to go over the top, skim over the surface, and snag them without digging up anything. So some of the other sellers might not be aware of this. and they go through and they're not knowing that it's affecting the shrimp in the bag and getting those shrimp sick. So they might not even have that many die in transit, but the problem is it's a domino effect that keeps happening until you get on top of it. We started selling the Shrimp Fit, and highly recommend using that before that really becomes a problem. So dose that into the tank when you first get the shrimp, and then continue to dose it a couple days afterwards. But now that you have a problem, you might want to look into getting Plamski Pure. We're selling that now on the website. If you're having deaths that are like a domino effect, where you're not losing the whole colony, but you're losing a couple of them every day, you've got enough minerals in the water. So I would say it's a bacterial infection, and the cure for us it's got to be the best way. We haven't done a video on it. We haven't updated our bacterial infection video, but that for sure is coming, and Plamski Cure is going to be the answer for that for sure. So,
and Shrimply Keaton says, hoping our tanks are cycled in time so we can order shrimp from you to deliver to Aquashella. Does the ammonia need to be all the way at 0? Tank has been cycling for 5 weeks. Ammonia is at 0.5 nitrate and 5 ppm nitrate is 0, but never really saw the nitrate rise. Oh, nitrate, sorry.
So, have you added any bacteria into the aquarium at all whatsoever? I like to have the ammonia at 0, and I try not to rush it, but just like with Sibley Warrior, we had some issues where we were trying to get it worked out, and we were able to get it dialed in. And if you're adding the fertilizers into your aquarium, and you add a little bit too much or something like that, and you don't have any plants in the aquarium, sometimes your cycle can be working just fine, and there's a little bit left over that your plants would take care of, or a water change or something like that might help out. So yes. They added the dead shrimp powder. I don't know if I like that one, because I feel like it's more of a bacteria that the shrimp are going to eat, and it grows, and not so much a bacteria for actually colonizing the filter. And I feel like you add too much dead shrimp powder into the aquarium, and it can build up ammonia on its own. So I would add in like some Microbacter 7. Fritz has a bacteria. Tetra Safe Start, I think, is even like one of the options that you can go and get. But I would definitely add something else that's actually a bacteria, liquid bacteria for your tank, and then after 3 days give it another test, because it'll take at least 3 days for it to get colonized and working. If you use a powdered bacteria, it takes at least 7 days for it to wake up before it even starts to colonize. So it definitely takes longer if you're just using a powdered bacteria. But I haven't done too much work into or research into the dead shrimp powder, just because of like the name dead shrimp powder. Like, I don't want to add a powder that could create dead shrimp. Like, it's bad advertising if you ask me. And because of it, I've never tried it. But it also came out right when I was done chasing. Like, I have a whole thing on additives here where we spent mad money. We didn't have that many aquariums, so in consideration, it was a lot of money on a couple of tanks to try and add additive after additive, product after product, to try and get more babies out of our shrimp. And in the end, nothing really worked except for going down to the basics: RO water, minerals, good food. Nothing else is really added into our aquariums except for a proper environment firsthand.
Davo said, would you consider Extreme Shrimpy stick pellets a good food for your blue diamonds?
We used it, and it was great. I would just recommend, feeding them something else other than just that. But no, it's not a bad food. I just wish they had bigger pellet sizes. They're tiny for us. Back to me.
No. Richard said, Shelby, have you seen the albino gold laser quarries. My phone has not been working, so I will check out the shorts when I get a chance. It's been freaking out. I dropped mine into a shrimp tub the other day while I was playing a video, and it was in there for quite a while because it's our bigger tubs, and it's not very easy just to grab it out. So I had to try to scoop it out with a net. So my phone is on the fritz. Like today, I tried calling 911 like 16 times. Like I was like, "What's going on?" So now it's like out of the case, and we all know this is not going to last long with me. Like I know that I will drop this and shatter this within a few days. Maybe. Well, I've already dropped it. Maybe it'll last a little bit longer because it is Android. Thank you so much, Only Oscars, for becoming a YouTube member. If you're new here watching with us, any YouTube member gets a YouTube member only sticker.
You keep
And
one in
don't
your
you
hair.
dare. Don't you
So
dare.
we've got a exclusive TGOE holographic members only sticker. So if you don't have one yet, the only way to get one of these stickers is to become a member, like June Only Oscars just did. And you also get a 10% off code to our website, tgoeshrimp.com. Stay tuned for next week. You never know what I'm going to pull out of Shelby's hair.
Abstract said, when are you going to give us a reaction video? We send in shrimp pickscapes. Maybe fun to see who has what and so on.
So like Mark's Shrimp Tanks is doing that right now, and I don't want to do that, and then it would like look
What is
like
it? Like sending in
Yeah.
pictures of your shrimp tank?
yeah. So it's a good idea. I like it, but I'll wait for Mark to like phase off and stop doing it for a while so people forget, and then I'll do one. But it's not a bad idea. It's just I don't like copying other people. I like to be original, doing our own thing.
And then Shrimply Keaton says, we are so new. Okay, liquid bacteria. And
Yeah.
what substrate are you using? Because some of them do take a little bit longer to cycle, I've seen. And then you have to do your water change, and then it usually will be good.
Yeah, sometimes ADA will leach ammonia for like 2 months, and there's really no good cycle that'll get that ammonia down to a good level for baby survival rate to be as low as possible. You don't necessarily need that when you first add the shrimp into the aquariums.
Danikin said, the green emeralds are doing great. Thanks again, Grant and Shelby.
You're welcome. Appreciate you getting your shrimp from us. They one side of the country to the other.
And then Nathan said, so when I remember, do I get another sticker? I really think I threw my wallet away, so I had to cancel cards. Uh-oh. But yeah, if
you're a member and you place an order through the website and you go, I need a new sticker, we will give you a new sticker. Just make sure you put it in the notes of the order. Just recently, our website updated, and it changed the spot where it puts the notes
So
when I pull up
annoying.
the orders. So I missed one note. Sorry. But we are aware of that update now, and moving forward, we won't miss any more notes, okay?
I'm caught up on chat, and
Oh.
I am leaving you
Oh,
for the rest of
no.
the stream. So-
All right. Well, I already
I'm
pulled
sorry.
it out of your hair, so I guess you're fine.
And then Johnny said, what two breeds, when mixed well, create realies?
Red cherries and blue dreams would be the best thing. Bloody Marys, blue diamonds you could also use, but basically it's not a guaranteed cross either. So, all right. Richard said, I'll give you a call tomorrow so I can get the info for the shrimp contest. Yeah, if anybody has any questions on the shrimp contest at all, you can ask either myself or Shelby. Skipper says, isn't it past your bedtime? I think it's past Skipper's bedtime. So let me rush through the rest of the notes real quick, and then I can tackle chat. So snails, I really recommend snails. They go through the substrate, they eat the uneaten food and stuff like that. Malaysian trumpet snails are probably the best ones that I would recommend I like to keep them in just about all of our aquariums now. I was doing a few tanks behind me without snails, and they just didn't do that well as the rack that we did where we pre-stocked them all with snails. Those tanks took off faster than any of our other tanks ever did. So I highly recommend adding some Malaysian trumpet snails into your aquariums. The rams, they don't usually do too well in Caridina tanks, but I love me some ram's horn snails in the Neocaridina ponds. They do devour the food, but we're talking about baby survival rates right now. And one of the things that is like one of those little tiny secrets is the importers, breeders over in Asia, they add a ton of snails into their aquariums because the snails will eat the biofilm. And as they're eating the biofilm, they leave a little slime trail behind them that the baby shrimp will go for and actually get more nutrition out of that than the biofilm itself. So I don't know how true that is. That is just a little myth, a secret legend. And, you know, any tank that we have snails in, there is usually like babies climbing on the walls. And it seems like there's always one that is in the snail trail that is left behind where it's carved its way through the side of the aquarium, algae, brown diatom algae on the glass. So highly recommend snails. Plants and moss, I already talked about this. The more surface areas, the more nooks and crannies, the more little tiny microorganisms, and the more biofilm that's going to be able to grow for food source for the shrimp. But also with plants and moss and structures, you're also going to get safe little environments for the shrimp to grow up in and the females to go in when they have their babies. They're holding on to their eggs. They're going to look for stress-free zones where they're not worried about predators or anything like that. And they can go in, they can hide, they can hang out until they release the babies. They also want to release their babies into a spot that has a lot of readily available food. That's why I like the moss and the little structures and stuff like that, because the babies will be released there. There's plenty of food there for them, and there's no need to really dose those powdered foods, because a lot of times the babies are born in low flow areas anyways, and not a lot of mineral or powdered foods are getting to those environments. So the more little tiny areas, little nursery spots that you can put around the aquarium, the better. So I do like my plants, the ones that don't go into the substrate, the better, like Java ferns, Boos, Anubis, moss. Those are my favorites to add into the aquariums. Welcome, Keith. Send us an email at thegardenofeater@gmail.com with your information, where you will get one of these stickers. Don't worry, not one from Shelby's hair. I will get you a fresh one, and we will send you a code for 10% off our website, tjoeshrimp.com. If you want that code early, let us know in the email. We'll send you the code, and then when your order goes through, we'll put that sticker in your box and take care of you that way. And have a good night, DD. Take care, and we'll see you in the next one. But thank you again, Keith, for joining, and welcome to the clan. So snails, plants, moss. We already talked about biofilm. Another thing where I think is essential, if you're looking for breeding and you're looking for the most numbers of babies possible, I highly recommend keeping just shrimp by themselves in the aquarium with only snails, moss, plants, and the stuff that I mentioned before. If you add any type of other shrimp that are not just, the same species, so I'm talking if you add Neocaridina into a Caridina tank, or a monos or bamboos or something else into the aquarium, and you're trying to breed a certain type of shrimp, those are going to take away from nutrition and certain habitats and environments where they're going to want to kind of go and stress out and stuff like that. So definitely don't want to add any fish in the aquariums. Those can definitely not just eat the baby shrimp themselves, but cause the females to produce less babies overall. So if your shrimp gives you 10 clutches of babies a year without fish in the tank, she'll probably only give 6 or 8 batches of babies a year with fish in the tank, just because of the amount of stress that she's going to go through and stuff like that. They're not going to want to produce as many babies because they're going to think that they're getting wasted, and it's not like something you can trick them into where they're like, oh, I got to produce a ton of babies, because they still want to take into accountability that these fish might not always be here or be around, and there's a better opportunity for them to give birth in the future. And then when keeping like just tiger shrimp in with the neocaradidas and stuff like that, it seemed like one always did better than the other. We've had different results where tigers did better than the neos, or the neos did better than the tigers. It really just depends on the actual colony's attitude itself and how well established they are to those parameters to take off and get the upper hand. And once they have the upper hand, they keep the high ground and they dominate the other type of shrimp. So it's not that you can't do it. It's just that usually one out dominates the other, and you want babies of both. You're better off setting up 2 tanks and keeping them separated. CO2 is, not impossible to breed shrimp with it, but for whatever reason, Caridina tanks where they do have CO2 tend to have a lower baby survival rates than others. So keeping CO2 out of the aquariums is something I highly recommend if you're breeding your shrimp. And then, of course, there's a no-brainer, keeping out toxins like copper and stuff like that. If you have copper pipes and stuff, run a hard heavy metal filter or something like that will make sure you take out all those toxins. Bacteria AE, this could be, one of the powdered additives and stuff like that a lot of people can, think will have real good success. And what I find is the amount that they say to dose on the back of the container is not what you should dose at all. I like to dose like 1/10 of that just when we're doing water changes, and that will increase the amount of biofilm in the aquarium. But it's not really needed. We stopped using it, and I think we're getting just as much baby survival rate today as when we were using it. So another thing that I like to do to increase the amount of babies overall that I'm getting out of my shrimp, if they're not breeding in one aquarium and all of the parameters check out and everything's been fine, but they were breeding just fine for, years or months or however long it will be, just for whatever reason they stopped, move them from one tank to another, even if it has the same parameters, same everything. I've seen like just a slight change in environment has caused certain shrimp to just absolutely take off, where I thought that certain tanks were just completely done for, that I was going to have to restart them, replace the substrate, the filters, everything, and start all over from scratch. And instead, I just took the shrimp out, put in culls or a different type of shrimp into those tanks, and all of a sudden, they absolutely just took off and skyrocketed. So it's one of those things where it's not like a secret. I don't have any explanation or anything like that, but don't give up on your tanks. Maybe switching some shrimp around or something like that might give you an upper hand and get you more shrimp in the future. So that's my one little additive I wanted to add in there. It's not really a secret, but it is something that I haven't heard anybody else talk about, and it has actually worked pretty well for me. So only other thing I wanted to mention before I get back into chat is I am speaking with Shelby this weekend at the Pasco Club, the Aquatic Club of Pasco County. It is the Powerhouse Talk, and we are both going to be doing that the same way we did our talk at the NEC Back to Nature Convention in Connecticut. So we go over basically maintaining 400 plus aquariums, how we handle the business overall, and what goes into it, making it efficient, and how we expect to handle 600 plus aquariums. So if you're in the Florida state in the area, you want to come by and check that out. We also have an auction after the talk, and usually has like 400 to 500 bags. So if you're looking for some good deals or you're looking to get rid of some stuff, the auction is always a great place for that. All right, so let's dive into some chat here. that is it for tonight's notes. If you have any questions or having any issues with baby survival rate, and I didn't really talk about something that is new to you, and you want to know why or what's going on and tackle your individual parameters or something like that, I would be happy to help with that. So Brandon says, I have red Rillies by mixing red Neos and blue jellies. Blue jellies are the same as blue velvets. You could use those or blue dreams. It's the same bloodline, so they would both work. I don't have any, and now every tank. I didn't have any, and now every tank is loaded with Malaysian trumpets. Yeah, if you don't practice cross-contamination, stuff like that, prevention, cross-contamination prevention, it's going to happen. And not only that, but we started the rack behind here with no snails, and they climbed like the airline tubes and the actual structure of the stand itself and got into the other aquariums. So 1 second. They saw my knees.
No one wants to see those. Next time, put that down. Oh my gosh. Catch up on chat. Abstract says, have you ever kept filter feeding clams with your shrimp? No, we had the freshwater clams at one point. I don't know if you've ever seen that video that goes around on like Facebook or Instagram, and it's like a tank full of clams, and the water's like crystal clear, and then the tank next to it was like the water from the same lake, like how much work they do. They just need such dirty water to actually stay alive. So it's not something I usually recommend. Happy birthday, Spaghetti Nona. Henry said, how long does the code last for? Curious because I haven't used mine yet. So the code does usually last a year, but I believe I still have the original code going. You can only use it that one time, and then there's new codes coming out soon. Sorry if I miss anything. Kuko says, how hard it is to keep Caridina shrimp compared to Neos, in your opinion? So we always preach that Caridina, if you have the right setup, is just as easy. There are some that are kind of hard, like when you get into your metallics or your boas, they could be a little bit more difficult because they really do need a lower stable pH. Where some Caridina, like Tangerine Tigers, can take a lot more fluctuations. Neos are always going to be easier. They can pretty much grow in any body of water. But if you set up the Caridina tank the right way, you're good. And if you have RO water and remix it with remineralizer, they're super easy to take care of. And like our Tangerine Tigers, they're a little bit higher in the pH, like a 6.7 to 7. And they do phenomenal. They're like the easiest things to ever take care of. And they're really beautiful to enjoy. You good?
All right, I'm back. Sorry. All right, so Shelby answered that question perfectly. And now we've got 5 gifts gifted by Ashley. Shelby has left before she could pull up all the winners. Thank you so much, Ashley. We really appreciate that. If you're one of the lucky winners and you won one of the memberships, you also get a sticker. You also get your 10% off code. So email us at thegardenofeater@gmail.com, and we will make sure you guys get all of that. But yeah, Shelby answered this question. As long as you're okay with taking care of water and the actual setup of the aquarium, they're just as easy as Neocaradinas to take care of. And some people have to actually prep their water for their Neos also. So then in that case, it's just the setup. And the only harder thing about the Caridina is paying for the substrate. So that's about it. Then we got Vibes coming in with the $1.99 super sticker. Thank you, Vibes. One more week, a week and a half, and then we will be in Texas and we'll be able to hang out with Vibes. Looking forward to that. So we scrolling through here, trying to find somebody's question. I seen it to Grant. I thought you said ice cream. Ice cream. For a second, I thought that's what we're about to be talking about, but I guess we can wait. Oh, happy birthday, Sarah! All right, how big, or how do the pygmy sunfish do with the shrimp? So I haven't really kept any of the pygmy sunfish with the shrimp yet, but I'd imagine the adults would probably not be a problem. The pygmy sunfish are super tiny, and they probably hunt the babies though because they are pretty good hunters. They do like them some bugs and worms and stuff like that. So I'd imagine they do a good amount of the babies, but in a nice planted tank, I'm sure that the babies could survive. You could have both of them in the same tank. So Mimic says, Grant, I follow y'all specs to a T other than falling behind on water changes, but not by a lot. Like when y'all get busy with shows. I know not a lot of my babies are reaching maturity. Can near 100% survival rate not? Ran out of space. Can that not happen? So it's not a perfect world. You're not going to get 100%, but I like to think for us, out of 30 babies, I get 27 of them to maturity. But the first week is the hardest because they're molting the most. And then after that, it gets relatively easier. So if your babies are surviving, for the first month or two, but then not reaching to the maturity, then I don't think they're getting enough food and they're getting picked off by the adults because most of the time they should be able to make it past that first week and have no issues. A lot of your baby survival rate is going to go down either that first day or first week, highest percentage. It's just like humans. That's why a lot of times the biggest birthday is celebrated as their first birthday because that's the hardest one. Not everyone makes it to that one. So it's just like that with shrimp. The first month is pretty much the hardest. After that, they should be in the safe as long as something doesn't happen inside the aquarium to affect them. All right. We got 13 more minutes here. I am almost caught up in chat. Appreciate that. Thank you again, Ashley. Yeah, Crypt Keeper will also be there. Looking forward to seeing both of you. Yeah, Vibes, where you been? Usually you're here quite early. So Grant, Crypt asks, Grant, what are you doing on Friday night at midnight? Want to help me prevent an Uber ride? That depends if I'm still scaping or not. So I can't promise anything because in order for us to really enjoy the show on Saturday, the hardscape of the aquarium has to be done so that way we're only planting on Saturday. So yeah, you definitely want to message me ahead of time, and if I can, I will prevent you from having to get an Uber. And he said, it's not bad. I just know I see tons of babies, and by the time they're about 1 to 2 centimeter, there's less of them. So, yeah, I mean, it's that first centimeter is going to be the hardest. And you definitely want to try and get as many of the issues out of the way and keep things as consistent as possible during that first month. Have a good night, Victoria. Hopefully see you at one of the shows this year. Oh. Empire hit Vibes up if Grant's busy. And then Crip says, Vibes, are you driving? I think Vibes is actually a local to Texas. So New Local Austin is also local to Texas. Michelle and John Morgan are also local to Texas. So there's quite a few people for us to hang out with, shrimp nerds to talk shrimp with and hang out with. So looking forward to this one. Also got Mr. Ruben, Mr. Shrimp Pimpin' himself. He will be in attendance at Aquashella. He will enter some shrimp as well as Michelle. Lacotes, I'm really excited for it. Dimax is going to be the sponsor. We're going to be using the Dimax aqua-based soil, and it's super clean. Pretty much filled up the aquarium as fast as I possibly could when I tested it out here at home, and basically zero effect on the water clarity. So it was crystal clean, and they also got some nice substrate that we're going to be using for the Neocaridina that is going to be inert. And then they're giving away one of the Dimax aquariums for those in attendance that are checking out the show and want to vote on Best of Show. People's Choice, I'm sorry. What they think is their personal Best of Show. So, all right. SL Aqua Soil is what we used. So SL Aqua Soil doesn't usually release a lot of ammonia. So I'm curious, did you add in like an ammonia source or something like that? Where would the ammonia be coming from? Because SL Aqua, very, very minimal amount of ammonia in there. So I'll try to stay on and help you out, Ken, figure that one out. Highly encourage using the Zen Ninja Uber service. Everybody's changing their name. Jeff and Richard Reynolds. I'm going to have to get used to this because I feel like Jeff Kane is going to disappear and it's just going to be Empire of Dirt Aquatics. Are you doing your water testing after water changes? Because I have 1 pp ammonia from the tap. The thing is if you're doing Caridina, you should be running your water through an RO system, and that is going to pull out the ammonia. So your RO water should not have any ammonia, but our tap water definitely has ammonia in it. That's for sure. So on Neocaridina tanks, maybe not best to test right after, but for Caridina, it honestly shouldn't matter. So just then give you guys some updates around the house. We got a brand new tank set up on the counter. It is all run. It is Aquascaped by Shelby. It is officially cycled. I kind of mentioned it earlier. It has the most filtration than any other aquarium we've ever had. It's also right now the nicest aquarium we've ever done. I'm also looking forward to adding on several attachments like the aquaponics system and stuff like that. So no ammonia source. Then it must be coming from the soil, but it could also, I feel like it might be coming from the dead shrimp powder. When was the last time you did anything with the aquarium? Have you done a water change? Did you add dead shrimp powder or anything like that? I assume you just tested the ammonia today, and that's why I was reading the 0.5. But I just don't know too much about the dead shrimp powder and whether or not that could be causing it. There was also, I was going to talk about the bolo balls or the bellow balls. I can't remember what it is, but it's just those white, I don't know what kind of material, fabric that they have, and then inside of it they stuff a bunch of barley and a bunch of other types of bacteria powders and stuff like that, and it's meant to sit in the tank for lobolo. I can't remember what they're called now, but again, it was something that I never really thought that I would add into the aquariums. They're $10 a piece. So for 400 aquariums, it's $4,000. I don't think I'm going to get an extra $4,000 worth of shrimp out of my aquariums by adding those into the tanks. But there's something in them. I don't know what exactly they're made out of, and it's possible that the dead shrimp powder could be adding some ammonia into your aquarium. I tried to bring my shrimp to a local shop, and they told me that they would rather import shrimp for pennies on the dollar. What else can I do to sell bulk shrimp? Depends what kind of shrimp you have. And if you're looking to sell in bulk, I might be interested. But again, it's not pennies on the dollar, but I'm paying you a lot less than what I would charge wholesale for the same types of shrimp. Not a lot less, but a little bit less. Usually for like red cherries, I'm not going to want to pay you more than 75 cents per low grade red cherry. For fire reds, I might pay $1.50, but I sell them for $2 in wholesale. So if I were to flip them for you, I'd be making 50 cents a shrimp. And you always got to consider loss and stuff like that. My way to get into pet stores is usually you walk into a pet store and they've got a shrimp section and there's dead shrimp in there. If you happen to have a good store that knows how to take care of their shrimp and they're not having any issues and anything like that, and they don't have any dead shrimp, then yeah, it's hard to convince them to pay more for their shrimp. But for us, it's usually, hey, you spend $1 more per shrimp, and instead of you losing 20 out of 50, all 50 of them survive, and you end up selling all of them. Those 20 shrimp that died off usually sell more than the $30 of extra charge that they paid on the other shrimp. So it's definitely worth paying more if the store is having issues, but if they're not having issues, it's hard to convince them. Other outlets to sell shrimp is like Aquabid and eBay and stuff like that. Maybe not selling them in bulk and selling them in packs of 20 or 30 is the way to go for you. Does 0 ppm TDS have a pH? Yes, everything will have a pH. If you pull RO water out of the filter system right away, it's going to read a different pH than if you put it in water, put it in a bucket with an air stone and let it run overnight. You'll get a different pH reading depending on what amount of light is on top of the aquarium. When light is introduced to the tank, the pH is going to climb. When the lights are turned off, the pH will drop. And then Dr. Anthony asked, what's the pH of the aquarium? I assume he's helping me fix out Kenton's problem here. I used to be a Rotala Tim. Luckily, Luckily, I broke free of that name, though. I did not know about Rotala Tim. I do know I got some Rotala I'm looking at right now from you still. Not a lot of it, but it's still there. One of the fish tanks. Richard's new name suits him perfectly, though. It does. I'm just, for someone that never reads chat, I'm reading these names. I'm going, oh no, I gotta get used to these new ones. And a lot of issues at home and stuff like that. I haven't been able to watch other people's streams and be active in chat, so I haven't been familiar with the name changes. All right. 1 week ago, I did a water change. When you did the water change, did you add more dead shrimp powder? I've had tanks of UNS that were still at 0.5 ppm ammonia 5 weeks. Didn't reach 0 for 6 to 7. Added Fritz 7 and everything. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some soils and stuff like that weren't kilned or fired appropriately, and they might leach a little bit more than others and stuff like that. So you always gotta, stick it out and be patient with the cycle sometimes. But for me, most of the time, 30 days is good enough, and we just put the shrimp in it and go for it. Yeah, swaps are a great way to move shrimp for a while, but then all of a sudden, everybody not only has your shrimp, but they did really well with your shrimp because you're in very similar environments, similar parameters and water out the tap. And then what ends up happening is all those people who did really well with the shrimp, and then they sell the shrimp, and then there's a lot of people selling the same type of shrimp as you. Still, red cherries do really good in our auctions every single time. So if you have a good local club swap or auction or something like that, it's a great way to move shrimp. Why don't you guys make the bacteria balls? Can't be that complex. The barley would start to grow bacteria on its own without anything added. I mean, I guess I could, but it's just like so much work to make 400 of them. Like, is that going to take up a whole day? Like, I don't know. I've never really looked into it. And again, it came after we stopped chasing everything. Like, if you came and took a visit, Crip, I think you'd be very surprised about how many babies are in each one of our aquariums that actually have shrimp in them. Like, it doesn't look like there's anything in these aquariums because they're just some real tiny fish, some endlers. But the tanks that actually have shrimp in them, they're breeding. There's a ton of babies, and I couldn't imagine there being that many more babies from adding something like that. I think a bigger aquarium and more flow would be the better way to increase baby survival than adding in barley or Indian almond leaves or something like that. I can go pick up some Tetra. Safe start tomorrow and give it a try. Thanks for the extra attention. Sorry for all the questions. Oh, no problem about the questions. Like, this is what the live stream's for. I'd rather help you on the fly, and not only when I'm helping you, I'm helping other people as well in the process that might be too shy or didn't realize, like, oh, that I have a problem also. This is part of it. I've said a lot of things related to this that might give somebody else a hint or a clue as to what they're doing wrong and fix one of their other problems. But if you don't want to pick up this Tetra Safe Start, you can also get Microbacter 7 off of Amazon. And if you have Prime, you can get it the next day. And I would almost wait for the Microbacter 7, even though it might come a day later. It's got 7 different strains of bacteria, and chances are one of those is just going to really take off and colonize and get your ammonia down to 0 and your tank ready for some shrimp for Aquashella. Yeah, exactly. That's how people learn. And you never know. You might stump me, and it might cause me to figure out something that I didn't know myself. So, good night, vibes. We'll be seeing you shortly. Justin says, the tank that I'm currently setting up has all the plants in it. It has organic Miracle Grow at the bottom and is a capped with eco sand from Seachem. I was wondering what I could do. I'm not sure what the question is. Like, what are you wanting to do? You said it currently has all plants in it. Were you wanting to change up the plants, or I don't know. I don't think I have enough time to go through all this one with you. It might be a next week's challenge, or feel free to email me and I'll tackle that. Grant, that name was a joke because Fat Kitty was jealous of my Rotala and Cripscape I had, and she nicknamed me. Oh, all right. It's 11. We made it. Yeah. I am trying to see. Oh, tomato plants, a little greener. I was doing okay at first, but now they are kind of turning a little brown. I mean, there's some that are still really green, but I don't know. I'm not a tomato plant kind of guy. I'm sorry. More sun. Yeah. API master only goes to 6. If it's lower than 6, I wouldn't worry about it, honestly. Yeah, I would stop adding the dry shrimp, the dead shrimp powder. Dry shrimp powder would be such a better name for it, honestly. But yeah, no, I would stop doing that. And see if the ammonia goes down too. All right, I think that's going to be it, guys. Nathan's got the last question of the night. All right, I have orange neos, and some are dark and some are light. Is it worth separating them and to try and get darker shrimp to breed a true color? Yes. Orange neos need work. There isn't enough people that are working on breeding out the orange neo caradinas for a better line. We had a colony going for a while until I broke my foot and I messed up the water changes on them. and wipe them out. But orange isn't really anybody's favorite color. It's the rarest favorite color of anybody. If your favorite color is orange, you are the minority. Most people prefer orange, red, green, and like yellow at the bottom of the chain still gets one up above orange, right? So all of those colors are really bred out and focused on and worked on. The orange kind of gets the bottom of the barrel. There was a breeder here in Florida that said he sells 50,000 red cherries to 3,000 oranges when he was wholesaling shrimp and selling them to the stores. Do I believe those numbers? Not so much. But the ratio is probably right. We would probably sell like 50 red cherries to every 3 oranges we sell. So yeah, I would definitely work on the oranges, but just remember there's not going to be a lot of demand or market for them. But come Halloween time, if you just save all of your shrimp and only sell at Halloween and sell them as pumpkins, you'll probably sell them all every year. And you can pull off like a McRib situation where you actually sell more shrimp just 1 month out of the year than you would all year round. So that's going to be it for tonight, guys. Thank you, everybody. We will see you next week. We will have a totally different topic altogether. What it's going to be, I don't know yet. You can drop a comment down below. And if I pick your topic, you can win a Sam Scales print. Have a good night, everyone. See you next week.